Okay, in a decision that upholds the sanctity of human life, this week the Alabama Supreme Court ruled that frozen embryos are considered children under state law. They said that the wrongful death of a minor act applies to all unborn children, regardless of their location. That's an amazing statement. Well, this decision comes from a case to decide whether parents could sue the Mobile Infirmary Medical Center after their frozen embryos were destroyed there at the facility. In his concurring opinion, Alabama Supreme Court Chief Justice Tom Parker stated, "Even before birth, all human beings bear the image of God, and their lives cannot be destroyed without effacing his glory." Well, joining me now to discuss this is Mary Szoch. She's the director of the Center for Human Dignity here at the Family Research Council. Mary, welcome back to Washington Watch. Great to have you.
Thanks so much for having me on, Jody.
All right. Well, look, before we discuss this decision, I find the facts of this case really horrifying. And tell me if I'm incorrect, but from my understanding, a patient there at the Mobile Infirmary Medical Center was wandering around, wandered into the storage facility, removed some of the frozen embryos, and then dropped them after suffering some freezer burn. What in the world is going on with the way these embryos are treated?
You're exactly right, Jody. The IVF industry is like the Wild West. There are no regulations governing that industry, and couples are paying upwards of $15,000 per round of IVF. Not to mention the emotional and physical turmoil that IVF takes on a woman's body and on her husband too. And so the fact that there is nothing regulating this industry, that their children could be treated so cavalierly that a complete stranger could walk in and drop them, shattering their future, literally shattering their future. That's a tragedy in and of itself.
Yeah, it's stunning to even think how this could happen. But then we have the Alabama Supreme Court upholding the reality that these unborn babies are in fact babies. I mean, that's amazing. How important do you think this decision really is?
I think it's huge. What the Alabama Supreme Court said was that the location of where a person is doesn't determine whether or not that human being is a person. So the people of Alabama have placed into their constitution an amendment that affirms that life begins at conception, that unborn children should be protected. And what the Supreme Court of Alabama did in this case was to say, yes, and it doesn't matter where that unborn child is, that child is always worthy of protection. And that's helpful for you and I too, because that means our rights are protected as well.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. I mean, you've got on the other side of this whole argument the just unbelievable language. A Washington Post reporter, for instance, came out saying, "Welcome to the theocracy." I mean, we're going to hear more and more of these type of accusations, but like what you just said, this is not just about, as important as this is, obviously, but it's not just about the sanctity of life, but this is also about the Alabama state constitution. This is not about theocracy. This is about the rule of law and the sanctity of life.
Right. 59% of people in Alabama voted to declare that unborn children are worthy of protection. This is the Alabama Supreme Court saying, hey, we can't make exceptions because you're an IVF clinic who's going to profit off the hopes and dreams of women and in massive amounts. We're not making an exception for you because you're an incredibly lucrative industry. An unborn child is a child, no matter where that child is, and that child deserves protection.
It really does. So one of the largest hospitals in Alabama, after this decision, they stopped or maybe paused. I don't know what the right terminology is, but they at least paused IVF treatments. Do you think this might be indicative perhaps of how embryos are treated in the hospitals as well?
I think it absolutely is. The IVF industry has an incentive for couples not to be pregnant during the first round. The IVF cycles cost upwards of $15,000 per round, somewhere between $15,000 and $30,000. The longer it takes for you to get pregnant, the more money the IVF industry is racking up. And so when we see that a hospital in Alabama has to shut down their IVF clinic, we have to question, well, what is it that you're doing that you couldn't actually ensure that some random person doesn't walk in there and destroy the children that these couples who have struggled with infertility for years have created?
Are you anticipating that we're going to continue, just like the Washington Post reporter accusing Welcome to the Theocracy, Kamala Harris came out likewise just bashing this decision, calling pro-lifers hypocrites and all sorts of things. Are you at all concerned that we're going to see more and more of these type of attacks against pro-life community?
We absolutely will. And the truth is that the pro-life movement has always wanted what is best for both the mother and the child. The IVF industry is exploitive. It is not a solution to infertility. And in fact, it doesn't ever address what the underlying cause is in infertility. It just places a Band-Aid on what could be a serious health problem for women. So if Kamala Harris is actually concerned about women, she should be trying to encourage the investment of resources in things like NAPRO technology that actually gets at the root of infertility.